All right, for attempt number 4, what we're going to do is we're going to simmer for the 25 minutes and we're going to bring it to a boil for the minute like the recipe calls for, but we're not going to verify that it reaches softball stage. Pretty much know that it's not going to because we weren't able to reach softball in a minute in attempt number 2. So here we go. All right, so we start with 3 cups of sugar, 3/4 of a cup of milk, a teaspoon of vanilla, 1 cup of peanut butter. It calls for half a stick of butter, and start mixing this. All right, so this stuff is melted. Our butter and our peanut butter are all melted down here, and I got this burner set on a medium. All right, it's just starting to move, so I'm gonna go ahead and start my timer. Remember, this is our experiment to make this recipe work, and we're going to follow the recipe exactly. We're not going to use a thermometer for this one and make sure that it gets to softball stage. We're going to see what it comes out like if you follow the directions and let it simmer for 25 minutes. Bring it to a rolling boil for 1, and then we'll see what happens. Alright, so we got our timer going. I'm going to turn this heat down because we're more in the simmer here. Alright, so I got the heat at about a 4 out of 9 setting. We'll give this a minute or 2 to settle down a little bit. I got some peanut butter there on my spoon I'm trying to melt off. Alright, I'm going to turn the heat down. I'm at about a 3 out of 9. On my burner. Looking a little less frantic, but I'd still like to get a little bit slower than that. Again, this is a metal pot and a ceramic stove, so they hold heat for a little bit. So we'll let that set there at a minute or 2 for that setting and see if it slows down a little bit. Alright, I'm going to turn it down to a 2. I want to stir this. Actually, what I'm doing is putting a flat edge against the bottom, going across it to make sure there's nothing sticking. Feels okay. Alright, I'm going to turn the burner down to a 1. See if we can maintain this simmer. I like that as a simmer. Nice and slow. We got about 20 minutes left to go. Alright, so I am stirring this about every 2 minutes or so. Alright, we got about 10 minutes left to go. Alright, we got about 5 minutes left. I'm going to turn my heater up from a 1 to a 2. Just to let this boil a little bit more vigorously. In anticipation for turning it up some too here at the end for a minute. Alright, we got 2.5 minutes left. I'm going to stir this one last time before we get ready to bring it to a boil for a minute. In 2.5 minutes or so. And I'm going to turn the heat from a 2.5 to about a 3.5. Alright, so we got 10 seconds left. It's going to take me about 10 seconds to reset my timer here, so I'm going to cancel that. Set this to 1 minute, and we're going to turn the heat up to about a 7 or so. Scrape the sides good and get all that stuff that's kind of crystallized on the side of the pan back in here. I got about 23 seconds left. I don't know if that's a minute of hard boiling or just a minute after to turn the heat up. The instructions don't really say. I think I might give this an extra 20 seconds or so because it didn't really start boiling right away. Alright, we're starting to get some caramelization coming up on this. So I'm going to say that that's good. I'm going to turn the heat off and slide it to the right. Alright, you can see we got some caramelization there. Hopefully you can kind of see that. It gets kind of foamy, bubbly looking. So, and I can feel it getting sticky on the bottom of the pan. And see, I'm starting to get it's real thick on the bottom of the spoon there. So now the instructions say to cool this, let this set for 10 minutes. Stir it and then pour it. Well, here's the thing. My dad used to make this in a saucepan that was smaller in diameter than this pan. So this is spread out more. And I think from my previous batches that if I let this cool 10 minutes, it's going to be like Play-Doh. So I'm going to let this cool for 5, and then we'll stir it up a little bit and pour it. So I think the difference is he had a smaller diameter pot and I've got a bigger pot. So I don't think I need to let it cool a whole 10 minutes because there's more surface area both on the bottom and the top for this to lose heat on, and it cools quicker in a shallower pan. So we're going to do 5 minutes and then we'll pour this. Alright, so it's been 5 minutes. You can see it's cooled down enough on the top to get a skin on it. So again, I'm going to kind of scrape all the stuff on the sides down in here. Go back and forth across the bottom. You can see I got a little bit, right there, I got a little bit of browning caramelization. But I don't have, one thing I don't have is the spots of caramelized sugar. Well, there's a couple there. But I don't have those like I did on the other experiment. So this is going to be a smoother fudge, probably with a little less caramel flavor. But I'm going to stir this just a little bit, and then I'm going to pour it. If you wait too long to pour it, this clumps out like a thing of Play-Doh. Doesn't really work right. So you got to pour it while it's still kind of hot. So that looks good. So the question is going to be, since we didn't bring this technically to hardball stage and one of the other experiments, we know it takes longer than a minute of vigorous boiling for this to get to hardball or softball stage. So I can pretty much guarantee this did not get to softball. Probably should have measured it. That way I'd know for sure. But I can say I bet my paycheck here that this did not get to softball heat. So the question is, what's it going to set up like? Is it going to stay runny? Is it going to set up hard? And when I say hard, I mean firm like fudge is supposed to be, not runny like caramel. Alright, so I think I've stirred that enough. I'm going to pour this. Alright, we'll set that in the fridge and let it cool. Alright, so this is our batch that we had where we followed the instructions, simmered it for 25 minutes, and then brought it to a boil for a minute. And it's just right out of the fridge. It looks a lot like experiment number 2 did. It's kind of firmer, not as soft as we wanted. Again, you can mush it up, so it's not hard, but it's not as soft as we were looking at. I'm going to let these heat up to. I'm going to let this heat up to room temperature, and then we'll see if maybe it's a little bit easier to cut. But it certainly tastes fine. Very delicious. Alright, so I've let this warm up to room temperature, and it's still pretty thick. It's not as soft as we were looking for, but it's not too bad. I can certainly get it cut into a square here at room temperature without it like cracking and coming out that way. But anyway, not quite what we were looking for, but it's not too bad. I think we're going to have to make a third. I think we're going to have to make another batch at some point to try to get this a little softer. We'll keep working at it.